will never forget walking in my neighborhood and seeing this store. Rite Aid was one of those convenience stores that blended a full-service pharmacy with everyday essentials, health and beauty, that was all in one roof. At its peak, it operated 5,000 stores in the U.S., making it one of the largest drugstore chains in the nation. But after a scandal from upper management, as well as increased debt from some bad acquisitions, Rite Aid lost its reputation with people. So how did a chain that was in every corner of the nation go out of business? Well, here's how. I don't need to find parking today because I'm in a good spot, so it'll probably just be a talking head today. But today's video is about Rite Aid. To understand how Rite Aid started, we got to go back to the 60s to Scranton, Pennsylvania, where it was founded by this man, Alex Grass. And he had the bold idea of mixing low-price items with drug products.
See, at a time when getting over-the-counter drugs wasn't accessible, he met the need customers in small cities were looking for. The discount model Alex hypothesized worked, and by '65 they had 25 stores across the Northeast region. Growth accelerated throughout the 60s, and acquiring other chains just increased their footprint. Eventually, the increased demand led to the IPO in '68. Changing the name of the company to Rite Aid. And this is where they entered their second phase, which was a national expansion. They didn't just coast along. Acquiring a store chain that had 47 stores soared their quantity of stores to over 100. That same year, they opened up a medical service division. The following decade saw the company become denser in the Northeast region as prescription volume reached a new high. I mean, by '75, they had 5 divisions in 20 districts just to manage the ship. Navigating the recession and inflation at the time, Rite Aid didn't really feel overwhelmed from it. They held back on their big buys and leveraged their distribution channels. Moving like a speeding bullet, they started acquiring more chains in a very aggressive fashion. I mean, every year after '75, they added more stores onto their list. By 1980, they had about 500 to 600 stores across America, even having a spin-off company called Super Rite in '84. And although the '80s saw a massive growth expansion for them, this was a setup that led to their overreach in the '90s. Between the years of '81 and '82, Rite Aid had to deal with a union strike that affected key Rite Aid hubs in New York. And New York being the Rite Aid's densest location that it was, workers claimed they weren't getting certain benefits from Rite Aid. The strike lasted nearly a year, halting deliveries to about 100 stores in the district. Eventually, it was resolved when the labor board stepped in and held a meeting. After the ruling, disruption no longer happened, but Rite Aid's costs from lost sales, legal fees, and hiring temporary staff still remained. Another crack was that they decided to acquire a dry cleaning business. I know, I was so confused about it too. Like, what? Like, I can't imagine the Rite Aid that I knew wanted a dry cleaning business. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But they did. And acquiring this pulled them away from the core business. What was meant to leverage the asset created a whole different type of complexity. On top of all that, although they were number one in stores, they were expanding in the wrong direction. Competitors moved into regions that weren't dominated by the Rite Aid's format and making their business model the norm for that area. Knowing what mess they created, the early '90s saw them trying to clean up their portfolio. By '94, the CEO announced they were closing 200 stores, selling off the ancillary parts of the business, and centered Rite Aid's focus on the pharmacy aspect. They were slowly getting back to their groove, but their fallout acquiring Revco killed any momentum they had at the time. What was a deal that would have doubled Rite Aid's size overnight to 5,000 stores never followed through, making the company pivot to costly West Coast buys. The FTC blocked the Revco acquisition because they thought that Rite Aid would have had a monopoly on the company. Crazy part is, a rival like CVS acquired the company in '97, taking Rite Aid's position as number one. Things got really heated when the CEO resigned in '99. He claimed his leave was because of debt issues from the overexpansion. But come to find out, it was because the SEC was onto him for falsified data entry. Every quarter they were moving numbers around, hiding losses and calling it profit. They were doing things like making fake rebates and had expenses that never showed up and getting bonuses from paid off money that never existed. The stock tanked amongst their debt crisis. A criminal indictment came in 2002 for the execs involved. The CEO Grass was sentenced to 8 years of prison. Rite Aid survived, but they lost their reputation with the customers. Throughout the 2000s, they became financially fragile. With store count peaking to 5,000 after acquiring a chain called Brooks, their profit increased but was still slim. The Brooks acquisition was just another addition to the mountain of debt they were piling up. And with third parties not increasing reimbursements for PBMs, margins fell for Rite Aid. It's not like they couldn't have negotiated better terms, but with their lack of scale, It didn't make sense to. Cracking into the 2010s, the CEO focused on right-sizing the company, which meant modernizing the store in select locations and closing out underperformers. And I guess the lifeline they were looking for sort of came in 2015 when they were trying to acquire Walgreens. And this made their stock soar 50%. But again, the following years, it collapsed due to antitrust reasons. From the breakup, Rite Aid lost scale, having the stores reach to about 4,500. To get some cash flow pumping into the stores, the Walgreens Investment Group invested $1.5 billion for a 22% stake in the company. By 2019, they were down to half the stores they had. To make matters worse, they were dealing with an opiate crisis that kept piling up lawsuits. These suits claim that Rite Aid was ignoring these red flags during the peak of the crisis. With not enough cash to settle it like their rivals did, they pushed the suits to bankruptcy as well. COVID gave them a little boost, but not enough to stop them from filing for bankruptcy. With the opioid settlement eating their pockets, rivals stealing customers, and weakened store sales, a second bankruptcy got filed, having them auction off everything and closing what was a remaining 1,200 stores.
And to be honest, the Rite Aid story boils down to one thing for me: credibility. They were always a flimsy company, acquiring and selling off assets. The CEO scandal was definitely a tipping point, and it came at a wrong time. CVS and Walgreens were closing in, so the spot for number one was tight. They already taken their eye off the ball once in the 80s, and they ended up doing it again by over leveraging and not moving strategically. I always thought a company like Rite Aid would be around for the longest until it wasn't. It just goes to show you that every company, can be destructed. Every company can be touched. Rite Aid was extremely important. Like, if you look at CVS and Walgreens today, about a majority of people probably get their prescriptions from there, because they're so integrated with the pharmaceutical industry. And Rite Aid was the same way, but greed and not innovating properly probably killed the company. Well, it's probably what killed the company. It's an interesting story to share for sure. Well, that's all for the video. Let me know your thoughts on what you think happened to Rite Aid. All right, catch you later.